Minecraft The Garden Awakens released to the public on December 3rd of 2024, and the public perception of this update was yay, but also meh. Mojang added quite a bit this update in the form of a brand new overworld biome featuring a top tier wood type, a new orange block set, new orange armor trim, the new creaking mob with unique game mechanics, as well as some decorative blocks like the new hanging moss, eye blossoms, etc. And this is the biggest update we've gotten since Mojang changed their update model. You see, Mojang recently spiced up their update schedule to now feature multiple smaller updates throughout the year instead of just one big one. So far, we've had the Armored Paws update, which refreshed wolves, added wolf armor, and the armadillo mob. Then came Bundles of Bravery, which helped out with the early game inventory issues. And now we have the Garden Awakens. See, I don't really mind this style of update releases, as it does do a great job to keep Minecraft fresh at a pretty consistent rate. But with the Garden Awakens, this update in my opinion added way cooler stuff than a bundle or some wolf armor. Yet, I haven't been itching to update my game to actually play it. So why is that? Well, today I'm going to give you guys my feedback on the Garden Awakens and why I think it missed the mark and what Mojang could do to improve the update from where it is now. The first thing I think that's on everyone's mind in regards to the brand new biome is the fact that almost all of the marketing material for the Pale Garden shows it off alongside a thick atmospheric fog, yet the fog doesn't actually exist in the game. Now, I've seen a lot of people mention that the fog would actually be a bad thing because it would make building in the Pale Garden a real pain because you wouldn't be able to see what you're doing, especially if the build is fairly large. My response to this, however, would be to allow the player to remove the fog via a built-in mechanic in the game, and I've come up with two ways that this could be implemented. Firstly, the most simple one, fog will always be present in the Pale Garden until all of the creaking hearts are removed. This way, if someone wants to fully quote-unquote beat the Pale Garden, they can enter the biome, defeat every single creaking until they find all the hearts and have them removed, and then the biome is rid of the fog effect after you enter. My second solution is a bit more complicated, but I thought it sounds cool. You know how in Minecraft there are structures that you can build using a special block to receive a special buff? For example, building a pyramid structure, then placing a beacon on top for added bonuses, or building whatever this thing is and then placing a conduit in the middle for a water breathing effect. What if there was a creaking bark item that would drop every time you defeated a creaking that could then be crafted into a special block that, when built around, would remove the fog from your biome? This way, you could build a creaking farm if you ever wanted to remove fog from future Pale Gardens, so you wouldn't have to spend all day and night searching for all of the creaking hearts. Just a thought, but regardless of how it gets implemented, the biome absolutely needs fog in my opinion, and for some others, maybe a way to remove it in-game as well. My next bit of feedback revolves around the lack of vegetation in the Pale Garden. And don't get me wrong, I think that the hanging moss is super cool looking, and the moss carpets climbing up walls when placed nearby is really dope, but outside of the eye blossom, which is really cool by the way, where exactly is the garden at? Naming a biome with the word garden in the name with minimal to no crops or vegetation items is like if the flower forest biome just looked like your average oak forest with a few flowers dotted around instead. I really would have liked to see pale pumpkins be a main crop of the Pale Garden, especially since this could be a nod to Minecraft story mode, and you could also use these pale pumpkins as a special food recipe, kind of like how pumpkin pie already exists. I also think having a flower type that exists as purely a flower and to not fool you into thinking it's a creaking's eyes would be pretty cool. So something like a pale poppy, and we could have gotten pale bushes, which would be similar to the azalea bushes that we have. Maybe a dead variant of these would have worked better considering the Pale Garden already looks pretty dead and gloomy, so you could just have some branches sticking up, but you get my point though. The Pale Garden nails the whole pale aesthetic, but there aren't nearly enough garden items as a whole in my opinion. Next up, I want to talk about the biome itself as well as the tree situation. Firstly, and this seems like a fairly easy change to implement, I think the Pale Garden on average needs to be 2, maybe 3 or even 4 times bigger than normal. There's been far too many times where I've seen players adventure out into new chunks to find one of these, only for there to be a couple of trees and a flower. I'm not exactly sure what's up with the Pale Garden's generation, but it's a bit odd on how much of the smaller side it is, when the whole gimmick of it is for you to get lost deep within one and for it to be spooky. And it can't really be spooky if you can see a whole nother biome on all different directions. Aside from making the biome bigger, I also think that there needs to be a bit more variation with the trees, specifically just making some of them a bit bigger, but not by too much, maybe by 2 blocks or so, just to add a bit of variety in the height and truly allow you to get lost inside of the forest. So the creaking is obviously a very big focus of this biome, but I don't quite feel like it got the love it truly deserves, as there are a few things that I would like to see changed. Firstly, and most obviously, the damage. The damage that the creaking inflicts is easily its biggest problem, as the mob just is such a non-threat to the player. The only time it could ever be a threat is maybe if you absolutely had no armor on, and even then, it's not really that dangerous. The next thing is I don't know if I'm that big of a fan of other mobs spawning inside the Pale Garden. Perhaps if Mojang either A, made it similar to the Mushroom Island where nothing can spawn but allow the creakings to, or B, just reduce the overall mob spawning of other mobs that aren't the creaking, but still let them show up. It just kind of takes me out of my immersion when I see the garden filled with a bunch of mobs that are 10 times more dangerous to me than the creaking itself. And lastly, this is a bit nitpicky, but it would be cool if passive mobs would actively avoid the Pale Garden biome. Similarly to if you place a warp fungus next to a hoglin and it just kind of runs away from it when it's near. It'd be cool to see this with passive mobs on the border, because it's a little jarring to see a cute little piglet adventuring around the forest because he wandered in there from a nearby biome. Finally, the last bit of feedback I have concerning the Pale Garden is the fact that it doesn't have any sort of structure. And I know some people might say that a structure existing in the Pale Garden might disrupt the feel of the biome, but just hear me out. It doesn't have to be your traditional style of structure. Perhaps a mausoleum, and for those that don't know, that's an above ground grave, which either has loot in it or leads to an underground crypt with unique loot in it. I also had the idea for a massive central tree that could generate, which would be hollowed out, leading to some sort of loot on the inside, which is kind of why I feel a structure is needed. The Pale Garden could really use a place where a player could find a creaking themed armor trim, for example, or most importantly, a utility item. I was thinking something along the lines of a utility item that could maybe help with mass stripping of logs, since the whole creaking and garden theme is the new trees. I really enjoy this mod called Sawmill, which basically functions as a stone cutter for wood, and I think it'd be cool if Mojang would implement an item that could mass strip logs for builds similarly to the way that this mod does, instead of you needing to one by one strip them, or hold 2 buttons at once while you're placing it and you have an axe in the other hand. It would just be really cool if we could get an item like that somewhere in the game, and getting it from a biome which has a wooden themed mob would actually be pretty awesome. That way the Pale Garden can hold some kind of unique loot inside of it, but nothing would be too game changing like the elytra in the end dimension. Overall, I do think that the Garden Awakens update was pretty solid. I didn't make this video to crap all over the work that the employees at Mojang did, but to simply provide some feedback on how I would have liked to see things end up. Regardless of what some people may think, since my whole channel is covering mods and other community-made content, I don't actually think Mojang is lazy. I know working on a game as big as Minecraft and needing to make sure it runs on as many platforms as it does is no small task, and I can't imagine how complicated game dev truly can be at times. So please don't take this video negatively at all, because in the end, I can just mod Minecraft to fit my exact playstyle as more mods release, because playing how you want to play is what Minecraft is all about. And I don't want this video to be like the end-all be-all, this is how it must be done and how Mojang must improve the Pale Garden and yada yada. It was just me kind of spitballing my ideas, and I would like if you guys in the comments would do the same thing as well, because it does seem like the majority of the community is a bit underwhelmed here, and the best way to get something better out of the Pale Garden update is to give Mojang our feedback and hopefully see it implemented in the future. But guys, thank you all so much for watching. This was definitely a bit of a different video for me. I have some very awesome videos coming out very soon, specifically in the next few days, so I hope you guys do stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe if you're new around here so that you catch all my future videos, and I'll see you guys next time.